Welcome to channel. Today, we explore story filled with unexpected twists. Please, subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin. I was in a downtown tavern ready to meet my partner for dinner when I bumped into Harvey Marks, an old acquaintance. Years ago, I nearly worked for him at Marks and Harper, but I was young and easily seduced by looks, so I went with another agency. Looking back, I believe I would make a better decision today. We welcomed each other, and he sat at my little table. Long time, Derek, he said as we clasped hands. I was actually pleased to see him. He was always a kind person and would have been an excellent supervisor if I had worked for him. Without all of the turmoil that followed, I may still be content with my job. Instead, I selected a less than stellar company, which forced me to launch a tiny agency with my former closest friend and business partner, Ethan Reed, a relationship that ended in treachery and grief. And Derek Lang, the former co-owner of that little ad business. After a few minutes of catching up, Harvey inquired, "So, Derek, I haven't been following the business recently. I had a health problem a few years ago, so I walked away. Caleb Walsh currently controls the company, and I'm semi-retired." "Oh, I see," I said. "So, are you here for business or pleasure?" Harvey laughed, raising his glass of orange juice. "Still the jokester, Derek. That's good. Humor helps in tough times." I raised my glass in agreement. "Half retired, I guess," he added. "I'm visiting my grandkids now, killing time between flights. I've got a 10-hour layover before heading to my semi-retirement spot. Figured downtown was better than sitting in an airport bar. Plus, you don't run into old friends at the airport like you do here. Mind if I hang around for a while?" "Not at all," I said. "It is a pleasure. I am just waiting for my girlfriend." Before I could continue, my phone vibrated. "Derek, hello honey, you have to..." "What? Damn. No, I just wish you'd tell your bad employer to get you more assistants," I added, laughing. "So, supper, how long will it take?" 3 hours max. "That isn't too horrible. Tell your employer I'll speak with him the next time I see him." "You do? Okay, I'm not sure how late Lunas Grill is open, but we'll work something out. Call me when you're almost finished or come by. It'll be in the Irish pub, catching up with an old buddy. You may have to get me into a taxi later, but it'll wait till supper. I love you too. I look forward to it. See you soon." I hung up and went to Harvey. "Looks like I've got time to catch up." "Great," he said. "Call me Harvey now, Derek." He drank his drink and gave me a serious expression. "The last I heard, you and Ethan were ripping up the town. What happened?" "It is a lengthy tale, Harvey. Kind of a hefty one. Like I said, I have time. I love a good story. Ethan and I were equal partners. Derek and Summers began together. We were an excellent combination, combining my big-picture ideas with his technical abilities. I was the concept person and the writer. I also sold the advertising campaigns. I developed the scenarios, screenplays, and text, but Ethan brought them to life. He wasn't much for big-picture thinking, but he grasped my concepts better than anybody else I'd worked with. Once we were on the same page, his eye for design and obsession on getting everything just correct on paper or screen complemented my fastidious approach. We collaborated for 7 years, 2 at that crappy firm that won't be named and 4 at Lang and Reed Advertising. That was us. It was our baby. We got to where we were doing all right and had a decent, growing reputation in the business. Sometimes we'd be discreetly called in by the big boys to critique their struggling projects, and they'd pay us well for our advice. We met at that awful agency, 2 junior staffers thrown together to try to rescue a poorly conceived ad campaign. That place gave scant service to their smaller clients. Well, we salvaged something out of it. Ethan had gotten married to a lovely woman named Jenna just before he came aboard. I had married Melissa 2 years before that. Melissa and Jenna hit it off great when we first got together socially. They became about as close as Ethan and me, maybe closer. They were both great wives and sweethearts, and much too good-looking for 2 ordinary guys like Ethan and me. On that, Ethan and I agreed. Melissa was a slender honey blonde, and Jenna had jet black hair. They were both well-put-together foxes, really. Indeed, in heels, Melissa came up to my level, and petite little Jenna barely made it up to my chin in very high stilettos. Ethan was a great big beefy guy, about 6 feet 2 inches tall. He looked like a pro linebacker, gone to seed, but he was much too gentle to play contact sports. Me, I'm about 5 feet 10 inches and weigh about 175 pounds. I actually played a little college football, though. I was the little guy they put out there to run fly patterns and return kicks. I got the snot kicked out of me week in and week out, but I gave as good as I got, and the half scholarship helped me get through school. I was on my own after high school. Melissa and I, and Ethan and Jenna, were practically inseparable, the gang of four, we called ourselves. We liked each other's company, in and out of work, so much that we went in halves on a mountain lakefront property and built a nice cabin there. We co-owned a boat too, a real sweet cabin cruiser. I've never seen one as big as ours up on any of the lakes up there, but hey, it was for 4 people. On the fateful day when everything turned, the 4 of us were supposed to enjoy an end-of-summer weekend at the cabin, but I hit a snag. We were supposed to make a big presentation of an ad campaign to Morton Textiles next Thursday, but that Thursday night, old Ray Morton called and said he had to go to Europe next week. If we wanted to try to get the Morton account, would have to make our pitch the next day. He was kind of a prickly old codger, and we really didn't, so we pulled an all-nighter, and Ethan came through as usual with all the graphics. By Friday morning, his part was done, and we agreed that he and Jenna would take Melissa up to the lake as planned. I would go to Morton and endure their glacial pace of meet and greet to give the pitch. If I were lucky, I'd get done by 5 or 6 p.m. after a 2-hour drive up to the lake. I'd be there in time for us to go out to the new buffet at a nearby resort. Old Ray Morton liked to do things nice and slow. I'd call it glacial. There'd be a long morning tour of the plant to learn how we do things at Morton, then a leisurely lunch to get to know each other's cut of the jib, and finally a lengthy afternoon presentation of the firm's goals, followed by Ray's dissatisfaction with their current sales campaign. I knew pretty much what his gripes were. The campaign was from a big agency that wouldn't put the time and effort into it when I got there. It was Murphy's Law Day. The worst laid plans, etc., etc. The local area got hit by a substation power failure, and everything was down. No power, no work, no air conditioning, no nothing inside. We couldn't tour a darkened plant with no functioning air conditioning. There could be no leisurely lunch except from a local pizza place that delivered. There could be no slide presentation in a powerless conference room. So Ray led us out to a little campus pie. I had lemons, so I decided to try for lemonade. Instead of general conversation to kill time, I started grilling Ray and his people about what they wanted to project in their ads. It was a return to a more peaceful rural setting to show off the work they did and the very fine products they made. I think it was nostalgia, but hey, I thought nostalgia would sell Morton products well. It was all of a piece with old Ray himself, who believed in what he did, and then I told them flat out what was wrong with their current, failing campaign. And I told them why. The ad agency simply didn't buy their self-image idea. The ads they created were slick, edgy, and borderline mockeries of Ray and his old-time virtues. It was a smarmy, big-city point of view with no sincerity in it. They took notice of that, I tell you. That's right, Ray said as he stood up. That's exactly right. They're more interested in poking fun at us and our ways than in selling our premium products. They think they're so clever. Mr. Lang, I think you nailed it in 10 minutes what we've been trying to tell them for 4 long damn months. Ray looked at me for a time before asking, Derek, how would you present Morton? I told them it wasn't exactly what was written on our presentation, but it wasn't far off. I'd been thinking all along about the virtues of an old-time company, and what they'd just been telling me informed what I told them. I told them our Morton ads would promote the ideals of honest work, good native materials, and hometown values, where a man's word was his bond, and you gave an honest day's work to the best of your ability. I was only telling them what they saw in them. Every ad would feature a different Morton employee going through a typical workday activity, and would end with him or her looking the viewer in the eye and saying, I go home every night knowing that I did my absolute best for the man or woman who buys what I make. There's not too many in this day and age who can say that and mean it. I stand behind my work, and Mr. Morton stands behind me. I won't let you down, and he won't let me let you down. Then Ray would step in beside the employee and he'd say, You have our word on it. Corny? Sure. Sincere? Absolutely. Jesus, they loved it. They crowded around me, pounding me on the back, and jumping around like little kids at a playground. Ray told me he was sold. He told me to FedEx the contract for the full deal, options included, to where he'd be staying in Germany next week. Ray was direct when he knew what he wanted. He said, I want you back here 3 weeks from Monday, when he'll be back. I want you raring to go by 8 a.m. We'll give you a real tour and introduce you to the kinds of people at Morton you'll want in our ads. It was just 12:30 p.m. when they saw me off. Mission accomplished. Lang and Reed had our first big account. It might be SOSO for the agency that had bungled it, but it had enough revenues to keep us going and let us bring in some staff to take the burden off us. I was practically singing as I headed out on the long road up to the lake. I decided not to call ahead. I just walked in, hours ahead of time, with a huge success story for the four of us to celebrate. I stopped at a gas station for fuel and a pit stop and planned to be on the road again by 1:30 p.m., but the restroom was so filthy that I didn't try to change there. Instead, I pulled around the back of the station, by the dumpster, and changed in the front seat of my Mazda. I wound up driving with my clothes strewn over the rear passenger seat and my swimsuit cladding bouncing in anticipation of the celebration. After I blew in, damn, I thought, I might even get in some serious sun as I drove up the cabin driveway. I could see that Jenna was asleep, swaying in the hammock down by the dock. She wore a skimpy bikini and was a real hottie. Just looking at her like that could give me a partial stiffy. There was nobody in the cabin. The cabin cruiser was out on the lake, about 100 yards or so from the dock, gently rocking. I let Jenna sleep on, though I did slow down to appreciate how little of her was covered by her string bikini. Now, I reveled in the feel of the exercise as I swam out to the boat. I thought I'd surprise Ethan and Melissa, sunbathing or fishing, but as I neared the boat, I couldn't see either of them. They must be down below in the cabin, I thought, but that made no sense. It was too gorgeous a day to be inside. I came to the short transom ladder and put my weight on the lowest rung as the boat heeled. I thought I heard Melissa's muffled voice. No words, just a sound. Then I was aboard and moving toward the hatch that led down into the cabin. I tiptoed, instinct. 2 steps down, I saw Ethan lying on the starboard bulkhead. Melissa was with him, seated on his lap, moving gently and steadily, as if they were completely at ease, with no rush or urgency. It was a calm and familiar moment between two people who had shared this connection many times before. As I stood there frozen, then her eyes looked back up and she saw me. She screamed, "Derek." I heard Ethan chuckle, "That hurts my feelings. Babe, it's Ethan." I was finally able to move. It was a toss-up between grabbing the salvage axe and going in there swinging, or just backing away and trying to think and plan. As I moved away, I heard Melissa's terrified voice. "No, Ethan, it's Derek." He was standing there and noticed us. Oh my God. I peered across at the pier at the hammock with Jenna's sleeping figure, and then up at the 2 vehicles, Ethan's Ford Explorer and my Mazda, that hinted at a plan, albeit a short-term one. However, as the saying goes, a half-plan is preferable to anarchy. As I stood on the transom, preparing to plunge, I heard Ethan's frantic voice. "Are you sure, Melissa? You fool, do you think I have no idea what Derek looks like?" Of course it was Derek. As I plunged, I heard, "Derek. Derek. Buddy. Wait." The water was chilly and quiet. I swam back, carefully aiming for long, smooth, powerful strokes. My attention was entirely focused on the movement. It made it impossible to think coherently for a few seconds, yet this small reprieve of tranquility would not last long. I was by far the finest swimmer in the bunch. I'd get at the pier in no time. The group, with Melissa banging Ethan, was about to change things up. There was no way to avoid thinking about it and a million other horrible things. I started to hear the boat's engines being revved repeatedly. I assumed you always flooded it when you were in a rush. I determined right then that Ethan's new moniker would be a-hole. I was torn between 30 and lying myself. I made it to shore, heaving myself out of the water and onto the pier. As I strolled by the hammock, I heard Jenna's mobile phone start playing her hilarious little ringtone from deep within her bag. As I approached the 2 automobiles, I could hear her sleeping young girl's voice. "What? I am attempting to sleep." "Then what?" "No, God. Wait a minute. I don't." "Then Derek. Derek. Wait. Wait up. Derek. I need to speak to you." I glanced back. Jenna was scurrying about looking for her sandals. She is not the kind of girl that goes barefoot. The gravel wounds her delicate tiny toes. By then, I was leaning in my Mazda, digging through my jeans pockets. I grabbed my keys and opened the little penknife blade. The Ford Explorer beckoned. I dug the blade into one rear tire, then into the spare that hung from the back. They deflated with furious, then faint, hisses. I heard the boat's motor grow louder as it approached the pier, but I didn't bother glancing back. I stepped into the Mazda, which usually starts well, and I could see them immediately. They had to travel 70 or 80 yards while sprinting up from the pier. I saw they had managed to put on their bikinis en route, all nice and neat for the benefit of any bystanders. Don't want to frighten away the visitors. I put the Mazda in reverse and mashed the gas pedal. I threw the wheel around, exactly as I was taught in defensive driving school, and pulled off a fairly good bootlegger turn. Once the ends were switched and I was pointed away from the lake and the cottage, I shifted into drive one and sped down the road, spitting gravel in a small rooster tail. Damn, I've always wanted to perform that turn in a real-world environment. It was sweet. So why was I feeling so sick? I reached the paved road and drove too quickly for a few minutes before cutting back on the gas. It wasn't like any of those back there would be following me for long. Not with 2 out of 4 tires flat. It took around 5 minutes before my mobile phone went off. I've programmed it to function as a home answering machine, with the person leaving the message audible after the beep. Honey, Derek, I know you didn't want to see that, but you just have to come back and let me explain. There's an explanation. Please, Derek, and baby, call me back. I love you, she said again, along with some variant of that message. I wondered whether I love you sounded as empty to her as it did to me. Just before I did my jazzy bootlegger's turn, I noticed the boat drifting away. Ethan had been so delighted that he neglected to tie it up. I assumed his mobile phone was on board, so I dialed his number and left a group message that they couldn't disrupt by answering the phone. I've got good and terrible news. The good news is that we have won the account. They lost electricity out there, so I couldn't do the presentation. We were simply passing the time sitting outside on some benches, so I decided to wing it. Old Ray Morton and his crew ate it up. He wants us to send him the whole contract next week. Now for the terrible news, which comes in multiple parts. The first piece of bad news is that I will not do anything about Morton. You may do anything you want, but I am dissolving our relationship as of the minute I observed what transpired between you and my wife. I don't know you and do not want to see you again. You have been deceptive and manipulative. Do you want to know the lies? Anytime you referred to me as your buddy. The second bit of terrible news is for Melissa. Are you listening, Melissa? I'm planning to divorce you as soon as I can talk to a lawyer. I hope this isn't a surprise, but I don't know you and don't want to see you again. You've deceived me, and the falsehoods you told me were cruel. Do you want to know the lies? Every time you said you loved me. The third bit of terrible news is for Jenna. You've definitely been involved in all of this. Therefore, you're now on the list of individuals I don't want to know or see again. No offense, but I despise being lied to by someone I trust. Okay, that's it. You may proceed with your plans. Good luck obtaining emergency roadside assistance up here on a Friday night. After sending out that small billet, I disconnected my attention and just wallowed. Oh my God, oh my God. Melissa and Ethan. Melissa and Ethan are fooling around like an old married couple. This must have been going on for many years. How could I not have seen anything till now? I understood that there had always been opportunities. The four of us traveled everywhere and did everything together in various combinations. ID invited Jenna to events when Melissa and Ella were both working on something, or perhaps working on each other. That was the essence of it. ID never thought about it. So they may have been doing that indefinitely, and I wouldn't have known. It might have started as soon as they met. My wife screwing my partner, my supposed life partner riding my supposed best friend, and Jenna just snoozing away. But apparently not surprised. No, definitely not surprised. All she could say was that she had to talk to me. How the hell would that conversation have gone? I wondered. Oh, by the way, Derek, in case you missed the memo, my Ethan and your Melissa screw each other every chance they get. Are you tired from your drive up? Let me get you a drink. I wondered what was in it for Jenna. The repetitive D of calls into my cell phone was getting on my nerves. I wanted to turn it off, but I briefly wondered how many calls per mile I was averaging. It might be a record. I might get something positive out of this mess after all, I thought. Then I had another thought. I'd have to share the record with whoever was calling me. Screw it, I'm not sharing anything with those people. I flipped the phone open and pushed the red button to turn it off. Okay, now what? My wife was screwing my best friend, who was also my business partner. Ooh, this could get awkward at the office Christmas parties. No, I was making jokes out of this. It was that or start crying right now. I knew that if I wasn't laughing, I'd be driving off a cliff or straight into a stone wall somewhere on the way home. Home. There's another laugh. Melissa and I had had a pretty active sex life, I thought. Or we had up until about 2 years ago. But even turned down a notch, it had been pretty good. Geez, if she's also been doing him along with me all along, she must need a pocket planner to keep her assignation straight. Or maybe Jenna kept the calendar for her. Jenna always was the organized one, keeping the sex schedule for the gang of four. Check that. Now the gang of three. Home? No, I'm not going home. Not now, anyhow. That's where they'll go when they get on the road. They are presumably sinking their lives right now. I suppose if the three of them work 8-hour shifts around the clock for a few weeks, they may be able to persuade me that I didn't observe Melissa behave the way she did with Ethan. It's all about persuasion, you understand? No, I was not heading home. I'm not prepared to listen to their falsehoods right now. Instead, I went to the workplace. Soon, we'll be in the offices of the soon-to-be X-Lang and Reed. Ethan will have it all to himself now. Perhaps he will leave the name Ross on the door, like Scrooge did with Marley's. Boo-hoo. Do you see those chains? Every time you screwed Melissa, a new link was formed. Rattle, rattle. Even I stopped thinking I was hilarious. I cried. Really wept. Really salty tears. I believe the term was wept. I needed to pull over for a few minutes. I couldn't see to drive through the tears. I wiped my tears and proceeded again, ultimately driving into my parking spot. I choose to be realistic. I began with the little elements. Save the big picture things until later, I reasoned. I created a checklist. I went online with my bank and opened fresh accounts for myself. I transferred half of everything from my joint accounts with Melissa to my new savings account. I auctioned all of our shared CDs and divided the proceeds 50-50ths. It cost us some money in early termination penalties, but I didn't care, and Melissa wasn't around to object. Screw her. I looked into our investment brokerage. They provided 24/7 online customer assistance. The machine processed my orders to sell our joint portfolio, but I requested quicker service. The weekend person texted me to phone him to confirm, so I called the number he provided me and explained what I was doing. I also told him why. He invoked the 96-hour cooling down period and said that he wanted to speak with Mrs. Lang about it. I told him to knock himself out, but according to the contract, whether he spoke with her or not, I had the right to do it without her consent. He stated it will be completed by Wednesday's closure of business. I said, fine. I thanked him. Check. I phoned our family lawyer, Alan Kerr. He stayed at home on a Friday night. Get a life, I said, Bernie. I wanted him, or a recommendation from him, to file for divorce and terminate our business partnership. He sounded astonished and inquired as to what had caused all of this. I informed him once I was done. He expressed his sorrow after learning about the situation. He warned me against going too quickly on these things. He wondered whether I would consider marital therapy. I responded no, that the time for words had finished at 3 this afternoon. He instructed me to contact him back on Monday morning to schedule a referrals appointment. I thanked him. Check. I looked up real estate listings and found an apartment in the closing suburbs. I wasn't sure where I'd be working after the weekend, but it was close to the big roads. I phoned the number and spoke with a wonderful person. I was amazed they were open so late. She said that they had an apartment that I could rent for 6 months with the option to renew. The pleasant woman replied that if I committed to arrive early the following morning, she would put the flat on temporary hold until noon. If I liked it, she said I could come over on Monday evening and sign the lease after they did a credit check. I thanked her. Check. Damn, I thought I was making progress. My life was falling apart around my ears, but I was earning a lot of check marks. It was a poor consolation for losing the love of my life and my absolute best friend, but I suppose it was something. I was nearing the conclusion of my checklist, so I added another item. I went through my Rolodex and discovered a card for Vincent Hale, the owner of one of the best ad firms in town. I had remembered correctly. He had scrawled his personal mobile phone number on the back when we spoke a few months ago. He was formerly a shark, but he was said to have matured into a pleasant individual. He had brutal individuals working for him now. I guess I called him up. He seemed startled that I was phoning, but not upset. We spoke for a few minutes before he added, Derek, I have no problem shooting the breeze on a Friday evening with a friend, but why do I have the impression this isn't a purely social call? That's because your instincts are still first-rate, Vincent, I informed you. In a nutshell, I caught Ethan Reed screwing my wife Melissa this afternoon. For some reason, it bothered me. I'm going to go as far away as possible from both of them. I'm going to divorce her and end the partnership with him. The deadline is almost approaching. Vincent, I can't ask you for a new wife, but I do need a job. Wow, he said. You've had one hell of a Friday, Derek. Let me think. I have an excellent organization, a touch thin in the graphics department, but no gaps where you'd be a natural match. However, this is mostly junior stuff. I have good personnel in any of the positions for which you would be an excellent fit. but he'll never turn down great talent or a guy who needs a little assistance. I could hear him whistle quietly as he pondered. I wondered whether Head truly mellowed. Derek, my head is whirling. I need to chat to a few folks. Give me a few days, at most until Wednesday or Thursday. I will definitely get back to you with something specific. To be honest, when I used to nag you about going in with me, I never imagined you'd really agree. I thought you and Ethan were going places. Yeah, well, not going to happen now, was my response. Vincent was thinking aloud. Damn, this might be quite intriguing. Do you have any leads you could share? No, I said. We won an account with old Ray Morton, or did win it. I'm not sure if Ethan can manage it on his own. Ray Morton? That rings a bell. Yes, Vincent. It was your account. You handed it to a person who pissed off Ray Morton. He's going to dump your campaign, but I can't snipe that one back for you because, first and foremost, Ray is furious with you and your team right now, and second, as painful as it is to admit, Ethan did a lot of the detail work. By rights, it belongs to the company, and since I'm leaving, I've chosen to leave it to him to attempt to make it work. I'd guess there's a 50-50 chance he won't be able to complete it without me. So you could have another chance at it. I overheard Vincent giggle on the phone. I can't believe you, Derek. Here the man has been messing you over, even with your wife, and you are still trying to be honorable and do the right thing. Didn't you ever learn that there is no space for ideals in advertising? Just because he's an a-hole doesn't mean I have to be one, I said. I still have to view myself in the mirror every day. Anyway, as I already said, you may be given a second chance, but only if we can reach an agreement before Wednesday. By the way, how could you be so reckless with a decent, strong account? Vincent replied, That's not like you, Derek. Maybe if I poke around, I can find other accounts that are being neglected. Point well taken, I said. Point well taken. Geez, it sounds like you're almost making money for me already. For a principal fool, you do nice work. I laughed. Without fail, I will get back to you Wednesday, Derek. Trust me, I'm not letting you get away. Damn. I gotta have Brooke look into losing that Morton account. I can't believe we got so sloppy. Who's Brooke? I asked. Brooke is my daughter, Derek. You met her a few years back at the large New Year's party we hosted. Very small, very lovely, and very keen. Are you employing relatives now? Nepotism doesn't replace talent, I said. Screw you, Derek, he chuckled. Nepotism has nothing to do with it. Brooke is a lot like me. She have good intuition. Unlike me, she has an MBA. Besides, she is my daughter, not my nepotism. God help her if she resembles you. Nope, she's got her mother's genes to work with there, and she did a good job, albeit in a small package. Anyway, you'll be seeing her after Wednesday, but be warned, Derek, she's highly sensitive about nepotism issues. She dislikes being patronized. Okay, forewarned is forearmed, or has 4 arms, or something. Anyway, thanks, Vincent. Forget it. It'll work here, but so hard you'll be begging for help. I laughed and hung up. Check. Damn. If you didn't know how screwed up my life was, you'd think I was really cooking. Oh well, time to go home and listen to lies while I pack, I thought. I told them on the voicemail that I didn't want to see them, but I had to go back to the house and pack. I knew they'd come there trying to explain, so I'd have to endure them one more time at least. I added another item to the checklist. They'll have to find a hotel for a couple of days. I called around and found one off the interstate near the address of the new apartment and reserved a room for 2 days and nights. Check. The next to last thing I did was dig up a mini recorder from my desk, load it with fresh batteries and a new cassette, and slip it in my jacket pocket. I might need a recording of the next few hours worth of conversation with the gang of 3. The last thing I did was empty most of the junk in my desk into the trash and put the remainder in a Xerox paper box to carry out with me. Check and check. It was dark out when I got home, and my house was dark and deserted. They weren't there yet. Man, I thought, that emergency roadside service really blows. I had just gotten my suitcases down from the attic when I heard the door open. I thought the gang of 3 had arrived. I figured they'd find me eventually. I turned the recorder on, set the jacket down at the end of the bed with the gain set to max volume. They came up, Ella in the lead. I guess the adulteress too, Melissa spoke first. Derek, first of all, we're all very sorry that you got hit with that today. Now will you please listen and not go crazy on us? Oh sure, I replied. I can listen as I pack. But here are the ground rules. First, nobody touches me. No hugging. Nothing like that. No one in this room has close-up rights to me. Not ever again. Understand? Second, if Ethan gets within swinging range, I'm going to knock him on his butt. No warnings. Got that? Okay, Melissa responded. Third, I won't listen to lies. If you feel you have to tell me something, give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I don't know how long this screwing around and cheating and adultery has been going on, but you've all been lying by omission for a damned long time. No more of that. Tell me all of it, first time out of the box. Okay, you have the floor. Ella, would you mind not sitting in the middle of the bed? I need that space for my suitcases. She sprang up and perched on the arm of the chair where Ethan was sitting, and I went emptying out my dresser drawers while they simply gazed at one another. Geez, I thought, they had 4 or 5 hours to get their life right. Ethan started it off. Derek, I know that you're pissed off at us, at me. I'm sorry about today. I mean, Melissa and Ella are going to tell you about that. But about the contract, our business, you can't be serious about walking away from the partnership. The contract you won puts us way up there. We're a team. We can be rich. I stopped stuffing the case with underwear and stared at him for a while. Ethan, a-hole, there is no we. There is no us. We're no longer a team. I can't be on a team with a man I thought was my friend, my best friend, after I found him screwing my wife. If you can't understand that, then you're too dumb to be able to dress yourself each day. He said, but the contract, the money. So you hate me right now, I reported. I hate myself. A lot of this is my fault. But people who hate each other work together every day. Hell, they even stay married sometimes. Not me. We are done. Lang and Reed is dead. Also, Lang and Lang. It's over. Ethan sat down, mumbling, and then Melissa had her turn. Honey, you said you wanted a divorce. I know how mad you are, but you can't mean that, Derek. You just can't throw away 8 years of a great marriage over one mistake. I slammed the case lid down. Okay, let's get something straight. Not a single one of you can understand how I feel, how mad I am, or anything about me right now. You're all just upset because I turned over a rock and exposed this little arrangement, affair, men, whatever you are. Way behind the curve on the feelings thing. So let's skip all this petty talk about our great business and the 8 years we spent together and get straight to the point. I'm ending everything because I could accept one mistake, but when I look at him, I see more than that. I remember what happened, and it hurts to think about how you betrayed me. That's my permanent picture, my screensaver. Do you think I could accept seeing that every day while we work together? I can barely stand to be in this room with him right now, but I gotta pack, and I know we gotta get all the rest of the story all talked out one time, so I never have to be in a room with Melissa. All I can see is you giving. Well, you know what? That's my picture of you. All I can hear is you getting off with that little cry of yours. That's my soundbite right now. No more business. No more marriage. They'll spend the rest of my goddamn life trying to forget those pictures and that sound. Ella, you've been very quiet. Explain to me how it was okay with you that Ethan and Melissa were screwing each other today. How is that okay? Let's get the whole story out. Maybe someone can go back to the beginning and tell me how this all got started. I'm feeling kind of masochistic, so I'd like to know. Bring me up to speed while I pack. Melissa sighed. Derek, sometime after we first got together with Jenna and Ethan, do you remember how I asked you if you thought she was hot? You thought it was one of those trick Cosmo questions, but I was serious. I wanted to know if she attracted you. I asked you if you ever fantasized about, doing her. You admitted that you did. Well, after I got to know Ethan, I began to have thoughts about him, just as I knew you wondered what it would be like to, I was thinking about that a lot. And no, not just about the size thing, either. Derek, I have no complaints about you like that ever. It's just that he's such a sweet, gentle giant kind of man. Jenna and I started having an honest conversation about our feelings, and she told me directly that she admired you and had a strong attraction to you. I mentioned that you were exceptional in many ways, Derek, and that caught her attention. Ethan isn't comfort, I interrupted. How long ago did you get serious about this? It was always sort of there, Melissa continued. After we first got to know each other as couples, I asked you if you thought Jenna was hot. I thought it was good that you admitted you had the hots for her. A lot of men would just lie and say, no way. Jenna worked around it with Ethan, and he was interested. He was cautious because he didn't want to do anything to screw up his marriage, our friendships, or the business, but he was interested. But you weren't. Ethan was getting into the idea more and more, and he wanted to get going with Melissa, Jenna said, but she said no, not until Derek's good with it. We all agreed that it had to be all or none. Otherwise, it would be cheating. And I tried to work on you to bring you around, Derek. She continued. But you kept rebuffing me, blowing me off. You just wouldn't take it seriously. I just couldn't believe all this. They had been serious. Yes, I said. Now I can look back and see your little campaign. You kept saying you knew I wanted Jenna, and I kept saying sure, but it's a fantasy. A harmless fantasy, and I told you I don't act out on my fantasies. And I told you why. Because we made vows to be exclusive, Melissa, our wedding vows. Forsaking all others was the phrase. And you were trying to tell me it would be all right if we both agreed to allow it with our best friends. And I was telling you it would not. That was sophistry. The vows are what they are. We don't get to renegotiate them whenever we please. And I remember that I clearly told you I was getting sick of hearing all this stuff. I told you I was an old-fashioned man, and that I'd never agree to fooling around outside our marriage, whether you said it was okay or not. And in case you forgot, I also said that I'd never stand for you fooling around either. I thought I made that pretty clear. Melissa said, yes, you did. And I told Jenna that it wasn't going to happen as long as you felt that way, and I meant it. I closed up my big suitcase and set it down. Okay, I said, so you're saying that it was all settled. You knew I wasn't going to screw Jenna. No offense, Jenna. And you say that you all accepted that Ethan wasn't going to screw you unless I was good with it. So what happened? Neither Ethan nor Melissa seemed to know what to say. So Jenna stepped up. The miscarriage, she said softly. That set it off. I couldn't figure out how that was involved in this, but evidently it was. It was one of the first real trials of our marriage, Melissa said. Nothing like this, but big enough at the time. It was the last day of October, and we were out doing some yard work together, taking advantage of some nice Indian summer weather. I started getting some cramping in my abdomen, but shook it off. Then it came back stronger. I called out to Derek, and he got me into the house. I called the doctor and described the feelings, and Dr. Hiller asked if I'd taken a pregnancy test. I asked her. No, of course not, she said. I'm on the pill. I can't get pregnant. Dr. Hiller said, nothing is 100%, Melissa. Take her to the hospital emergency entrance. I don't like the sound of this. She asked if there had been any bleeding. I started to say no, but then Melissa yelped, and I saw she was bleeding a little bit. I bundled her up and drove her over. The bleeding was stronger when we got there, and the cramping was bad. They did some tests and gave Melissa something to make the cramps less painful, but it took a few hours before she was beginning to feel like she was getting back to normal. The cramps ended, and so did the bleeding, but Melissa felt all washed out and weak. They cleaned her up, and Dr. Hiller gave her some meds. Then she sat down with us and said that she had had a chemical pregnancy, which is what they call a very early pregnancy miscarriage. The fetus was too early to even have a heartbeat that anyone could detect. She said I hadn't had any idea I might be pregnant, but I had, and that poor little life had just floated out of me with the blood. They let me take her home that night. I was scared for her and tried to be supportive. Melissa said she felt numb after a while. She told me that she was all consumed with the idea that we'd made love and almost made a life together, and now it was dead. I saw that she didn't find comfort in my arms anymore, and she shrank from me at night. It was as if she didn't want to go anywhere or do anything for weeks. Jenna and Dr. Hiller told me that Melissa was in a post-traumatic shock syndrome of depression. She said I had to be patient with her and that I shouldn't press her for sex until she said she was ready, so I held back. When we got to Thanksgiving, it was the first time that she seemed to be herself. She got all caught up in decorating the front door and then had me take pictures of all the little trick-or-treaters who came by. We laughed and applauded their costumes and then closed. Yes, it was New Year's Day almost 2 years ago, Jenna said. We all went to vote, and then we went out to dinner and went to our house to watch the returns. It was the first time Melissa had been out after her miscarriage. Remember that night, Derek? You were my gallant hero when I got so sick from the seafood that I was just heaving and heaving. We had all been drinking pretty much, except for you, our old reliable designated driver. It was raining, and Ethan was prepped when I got back the next day. Ethan got me alone and told me that they'd done the deed. It was not what we'd agreed. We'd agreed to just cool it until we could find some way to bring you around. But I guess Ethan and Melissa were getting pretty antsy. Now it had gone past the point of no return. It was inevitable, I suppose. I kept staring at Ethan. Finally, he sighed. Okay, it was my bad. We were drinking and cuddling, and I just got so aroused that I started touching Melissa, and she responded. We'd both been fantasizing about it for so long. We'd even talked about how it would go, envisioning the whole sequence. Well, it went just like we talked about, and then we had wild sex. We broke our agreement. I was just too weak. I can't make any excuses either, Melissa told me. I was weak too. I wanted it so bad. We felt awful about it once we'd done it. We cheated on both you and Jenna, but I accepted it as a done deal. Jenna said, so we remade the agreement. Melissa continued, we accepted that it would go on with Ethan and me, but I would keep working on you. We still had hopes that you'd come around eventually. We even thought about getting you drunk and putting Jenna in your bed, but she thought that was too unfair. Until then, we would be very careful and make sure that you would never find out. We felt guilty about it, but that didn't stop us. We'd keep it secret, Melissa said. And we all agreed that under the new arrangement, Melissa would never deny you sex or stint on your relations or do anything to hold herself back from you. That way, we really weren't hurting you or your marriage, she told me. I slammed that suitcase lid down. Stop it right now, I said. When we began this little talk, remember my ground rules. Number 3 was that I wouldn't listen to any lies. What you just said was a lie. Ella and Melissa looked at each other, stunned, not comprehending. Ethan said, after you got together with Melissa for the first time, did you keep on with it? Ethan nodded. How often? 2 or 3 times a week from election night on, Ethan said, at least. Okay. I said, now you listen to me, Melissa. We had sex the night before you had the miscarriage, right? Yes, I guess so, she said, her voice breaking. Then you miscarried, and 5 weeks later, after the miscarriage, on Thanksgiving, you were still turning me away, right? Yes, but it was too soon after. I know you said that you were still depressed, that it was too soon, right? Okay, then came election night, and you screwed Ethan. That was 7 days later. You were depressed and not in the mood one day for old Derek, but 7 days later, you were so undepressed that you couldn't wait to spread them and get it on with Ethan. They were looking at me, wondering what I was getting at. Now, Melissa, when did we first make love after that? Well, I can't remember, Melissa said. I can. I told you. It was December 27th, year-end eve. You finally began warming up to me as you got all caught up in the Christmas spirit. But long before that, starting the 7th day after you denied me, you and Ethan began screwing and were doing it 3 or 4 times a week. That was over 8 weeks before year-end eve. You never denied me. That's a despicable lie. I picked up my suitcases and tried to add on my duffel and dop kit, but it was too much for me to take in one trip. They were looking at each other, trying to make sense of what I just said. Jenna said, Melissa, I specifically asked you if things were good with you and Derek. You said sure. You never said anything about cutting him off all that time, but we had agreed that he wasn't supposed to miss out. Melissa said. Ella, why didn't you make love with Derek after election night? I thought you kind of said that you were Jesus. Melissa, you were over your depression. You were screwing Ethan like crazy. Melissa looked around wildly. I don't know, she said. I don't know what to say. I really wasn't aware that it was like that. When I was with Ethan, I was all over the depressed feelings. He was such a gentle, big old teddy bear, and I felt so open, happy, and safe with him. But when I was with you, Derek, you were my husband, and we had made a baby together, and the baby had died, and the depression would come back and take hold of me. She finally looked at me. Oh God, I didn't realize. I'm so sorry, but Derek, I swear, I didn't mean it. It wasn't on purpose. It just happened that way. I just looked at her. Melissa, even when we got back together at Christmas, and ever since, our sex life has never been the same. You were just not as engaged with me as you had been. Now I know why. Gotta save up the real loving for old Ethan Bear there. More lies? I started out of the bedroom carrying the 2 cases. I realized that Jenna was coming behind me, carrying my duffel and my dop kit. We walked out to the garage in silence. Derek, why aren't you as mad at me as you were at Ethan and Melissa? She said at last. Other than going along with it, you've never, well, as far as I know, you've never betrayed me with my wife. I said, I don't know, Jenna. Going along was a betrayal too. Drifting from one broken agreement to another was too. I'm the one who was crazy to want to have you for that alone. You deserved better from me. Jenna sighed. So I guess I should be just as guilty in your eyes. Yeah, I said. I guess. But I need a little help carrying the stuff, and you volunteered. I can't deal with more than one betrayal in a 24-hour period. They'll hate you tomorrow. I paused, adding, I'm sorry, Jenna. We're all sorry. It wasn't supposed to be like this. We messed up. But look, they'll get Ethan and Melissa to stop. I snorted at that. No, seriously, all the way down here. They're both pretty shaken up about all this, the way it's all blown up, especially Melissa. Derek, she really didn't realize she was cutting you off. She knows I'm furious at her for that. Maybe we can all take some time to cool down. Maybe we can all talk through all this. Maybe see a counselor? No way, I said. What difference can it make? If they cross their legs now, the pictures in my head won't ever go away. I could never trust them again. I could never trust you again. You would do, say, or lie about anything to try to undo this mess. None of it would be worth a damn to me. Hell, you people couldn't be trusted to keep your own agreements. Ethan and Melissa made them and broke them whenever they were inconvenient or got in the way of a good screwing. For a second, I thought Jenna was going to hug me, and I stiffened and leaned away. The first rule. She turned and went back into the house. She still had that fine, foxy body, but I couldn't appreciate it anymore. I went to a hotel. The next day, Saturday, I went over and claimed the apartment the nice lady was holding for me. Monday, I signed a 6-month lease on my new apartment. I also called Bernie's office and got the number of a divorce lawyer that he recommended. I called and got lucky. They were booking almost 5 weeks in advance, but as I was on one line, someone else was on another line calling to cancel. He'd been in an auto accident. I got his appointment for the next day. I bought some cheap furniture and kitchen stuff from a Salvation Army store. There were 2 guys looking around in the store. We were the only men there, so we started to talk. They were just browsing. They said they didn't have much cash to buy anything. They had a pickup, so I hired them on the spot to move my stuff over and carry it in 2 trips, and I was settled in, and they were $100 richer apiece. The place had a phone line and was pre-wired for cable, so I'd have internet access by Wednesday. I ignored all voicemails from the gang of 3. I got the faint notion that they were all very, very, very sorry. Blah, blah, blah. I wondered why they were wasting their time on the phone when they could be screwing 24/7. Tuesday, I met with the divorce lawyer. She said that there were some mutual grounds for what could be an expedited divorce, but the other party had to agree. Just for grins, I picked up my cell phone and called Melissa. Before she could recover, I asked if she'd go along with an expedited divorce on those mutual grounds. She sputtered and cried and vowed that she loved me and would do anything. I cut her off. No, I said. I don't think Melissa likes that idea. And we thank you for watching. What would you do if you uncovered a betrayal like this? Please share your opinions below, and remember to like and subscribe.